President and Provost of the University of Nevada at Reno. Now, just to give a little formatting for these forums, I'm going to allow for each of the candidates this week to give up to 10 minutes of an introduction and talk about their vision, their experience, whatever they want to share with you up front. And then we'll have an open Q&A for the rest of the session. So as you can see, we have a microphone over to the far left or to your right. And so well, if we had more students in here, we would have a line. But if there are any students, here who would like to ask questions, you'll be the first to come up. And then once you've exhausted your questions, I have a few of my own that I'd like to ask. So we're going to really play it by ear, I'd say. Depending on how many questions we really have, it may not last an hour, but that is the most that this forum will take. And if somehow we manage to run the whole hour and you still have questions you want to ask and you want to hear more from the candidates, there's always a forum right after this one at 5:30 upstairs in the ballrooms, C and D specifically. So with that, I would like to give a round of applause to our first finalist, Dr. Kevin Carman.
Thank you, Thomas. I appreciate it. Thomas has had a busy day. We've spent a lot of good time together. Thanks for you folks for coming out, and I do hope to have the opportunity to answer questions that you might have. I thought I'd take just a minute to tell you a little bit about myself, where I come from, what my background is, and why I'm interested in this position. Not to give you my whole life story, but I'm originally from western Kansas, grew up in small rural communities and went to little tiny high schools in western Kansas, and I always wanted to be, as a kid growing up in Kansas, oddly enough, a marine biologist, and I wound up being able to pursue that dream after going to college in McPherson, Kansas, McPherson College, getting a biology degree there. And then I went to Florida State University, and that's where I first became, the first time I'd been to Florida, and drove my VW Bug with my Vespa strapped onto the back of it, and moved from Kansas to Florida, and joined the oceanography program at Florida State University in 1982. I got my master's degree there, and then worked a year for the Florida Department of Environmental Regulation, which was a really great experience for me to learn more about the state of Florida. I was involved with sampling the bays and estuaries throughout Florida. We started in Jacksonville, went all the way down to Key West, and worked our way back up to Pensacola over the course of the year to do sampling to understand the pollution environment in bays and estuaries throughout Florida, and establish some baseline data for setting standards for the state of Florida. After doing that for a while, for a year or so, I then went back to Florida State and pursued my PhD, and again in biological oceanography at Florida State, and I finished that in 1989. At which time I went to LSU and joined the faculty there after a couple of years of postdoc. Went through the faculty ranks, and I spent 24 years there, the last 9 of which was as Dean of the College of Science. So I was in what was then the Department of Zoology and Physiology, and was later renamed the Department of Biological Sciences. During my time as Dean of the College of Science, it wasn't necessarily something that I had planned on pursuing, of being a dean, but I found that I enjoyed serving the university in that capacity, and felt like I had a bit of an aptitude for it, and enjoyed being able to impact the university at a higher level. Honestly, the thing I missed most about that was being involved with teaching. I did still teach some, but it was much less. But after 9 years, and both of our children grew up, and they were off to college at LSU, right there in Baton Rouge, I began to think that it was a time to look for other opportunities if I was going to move on in my career. And the next logical progression for many deans, if they want to move on, is to move on to the provost position. And I don't know how much you know about the provost role, but another title for that is the chief academic officers. The deans report to the provost, and the provost has sort of the person who works on the inside of the university to make sure that the academic programs are functioning as they should be, and that the deans have the appropriate resources to provide educational programs. And so it's very much a partnership and an oversight with all the academic programs on campus. And so this opportunity at the University of Nevada, Reno came along. I wasn't necessarily looking at the time, and I didn't know much about that university, but the search firm contacted me, and the more I learned about it, the more intrigued I became. I don't know if any of you have ever been to Reno, but it's a fascinating place. We're 45 minutes from Lake Tahoe. Really quite a beautiful part of the world and a lot of fascinating things to see and do. You can be fly fishing, you can go skiing in the morning and fly fishing and golfing in the afternoon if you enjoy those sorts of things. But it's been a university that's been on a very positive trajectory, and I've really enjoyed being there. One of the things that attracted me to the university was when I interviewed for the position, the president, and who's still the president, President Johnson, told me that he wanted a provost who was going to be engaged with all aspects of leadership at the university, including the things that presidents typically do and sometimes provosts are not involved with, including interactions with external stakeholders, elected officials, for example, board of trustees, community members, donors, and so those are things that provosts often don't do because they're focused just on the internal aspects of the university. But I was intrigued with the notion of learning more about the broader aspects of the university, and so President Johnson has been very good about including me in those over the years, and I've over that time come to believe that I think I'd like to try being a president. I think it's a role that I would enjoy. Being able to provide leadership at a university at that level, and so it's sort of a next step, logical progression in what has been I've been very fortunate in my career. And again, I wasn't necessarily looking, but there's a search firm, as you probably know, that's conducting this search, Parker Executive, and they contacted me. I know the people that work for Parker Executive. I've known them for many years, and I've used them in searches of my own, and so we have a good working relationship. And they said, we have a position that we think might be a good fit for you, and so they sent me some information, and I looked into it a bit, and this was all just over a fairly short period of time, over the last couple of weeks. And so I brushed up my credentials and sent them in, and was here last week, as you probably know. We covered it in the Spinnaker. For a brief interview among the semifinalists, and that was on Wednesday of last week. And by the time I landed back in Reno Wednesday night about midnight, had a text from Parker saying, we'd like you to come back. And so I'm back here, so I'm logging a lot of frequent flyer miles between Reno and Jacksonville, actually flying in and out of Orlando. So yesterday and today I've had the opportunity to meet with a broad range of stakeholders at the university, faculty, staff, deans, vice presidents, trustees, and a range. I just finished meeting with the staff and had a very good discussion with them, and of course the faculty. And so we're coming near the end of the formal process, or I'm happy the opportunity to have a discussion with students. And as Thomas indicated, there's another forum after this that is for anybody that we missed, I guess, or anybody that wants to ask some more questions. So feel free to join us there. But I see UNF as a university that it's a relatively young university that's come a long way in a relatively short period of time. It is what I gather seems to have a great educational experience for its students. I hear from faculty and staff and trustees that there is an interest and a potential appetite of seeing the university move forward with more research activities at the institution, which can raise the profile of the university and also can increase opportunities for students to be engaged at scholarship at a meaningful level. And so that seems to be part of the discussion that I'm hearing that is intriguing to me. I'm interested in programs that may enhance student success and improve retention and graduation rates at the university. We've done some things in my previous institutions that have had some pleasing results, and there seems to be some appetite for considering some of those programs here at UNF, and would be delighted to have the opportunity to consider implementing them here. So those are the basic introductory remarks about who I am, where I come from, and at least a thumbnail sketch of where my interest lies and with the university. So with that, I would be happy to pause and try to answer your questions, Thomas.
All right, so with the students that are in the audience, if you have any questions, please come up to the microphone. You don't have to come up now, but if you have any questions already prepared, now's definitely the time. And go ahead and introduce yourself so we all get to know you.
Hi,
Here comes help.
Hello? Yes. My name is Colin. I'm with UNF Spinnaker, and I actually have quite a few questions for you. So is there anything about UNF that inspired you in particular to come here?
Well, I could point to a couple of things. One is that as I looked at the university, I saw, again, as a relatively young university that's come a long way and has done some really good things, but then also saw what I felt like was an opportunity to take a next step in the progression of the university. And I'm not really somebody who is terribly interested in coming to a place that is fully mature and everything's working well and you just need somebody to maintain the status quo and don't mess things up. Certainly I hope I don't mess things up when I come here, but throughout my life I've been interested in opportunities where there were opportunities to make a difference and make change, and so I see those opportunities here. And I also, as the more I've talked with the people here at the university, the more I hear what seems to be an appetite for moving the university to the next level. So that's one reason. Another is that I mentioned that I have 2 degrees in oceanography and have spent my faculty research career doing research in marine, shallow water and deep water environments. And I enjoyed that very much, and I don't expect to rejuvenate my research career here, but one of the reasons that I became intrigued with oceanography is because I really love the ocean and just being near it. And I never in my life have actually lived near the ocean. I've always been at least a couple of hours away in Reno, where you can get to the Pacific Ocean with about a 3 or 4 hour drive. But the notion of actually being able to walk out and take a walk on the beach and smell the salt air is very appealing to me. Cool. And my wife's an oceanographer as well.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Yeah. What do you think are the 2 top priorities that UNF needs to tackle right away?
Well, based on what I've seen and heard during a brief visit, and I have to say that with the brief exposure, one has to be careful about coming to too many conclusions about what is exactly the next step. But I think that there is an opportunity and an appetite for implementing some initiatives that could significantly improve student success, retention and graduation rates at the university, particularly at the undergraduate level. And then the other opportunity that will need to involve a pretty robust discussion with the entire campus community is, if we want to move forward as a research university, what would that look like? It isn't just a matter of all boats rising, that all research is going to increase. We need to decide what are the appropriate programs at the university where we have strength, that we could leverage that strength, potential partners in the community that we could work with to build graduate programs and research programs that make sense for the university and for the community. But there does seem to be an appetite for doing that. We just need to think very carefully and strategically about how to do that.
Okay. Do you see UNF more like UCF, which has about 64,000 students, or do you see enrollment pretty much staying the same here at UNF, where there's like an emphasis on SAT scores and honor students?
I do not see UNF as like UCF. UCF has grown extremely rapidly. They've grown very rapidly as a research university. It doesn't mean that at some point in the future that UNF may look more like UCF, but I don't think that we should look at them as an example of what we should be like. I think we need to decide what is best for this university. And the projections that I've seen show that based on increases in enrollment in recent history, that we should be around 21,000 students in about 5 years, and maybe within a decade around 25,000 students. So I actually favor thoughtful, controlled growth rather than sort of out of control, rapid growth. And also, from what I gather from talking with folks who have deep knowledge of our footprint of the university, the campus, and the campus that we have, and the land that we can build on, it looks like 25,000 students is about maybe a right size for this university within its current configuration. So now the question is, what does that 21 and 25,000 look like? It isn't necessarily just more of the same of what we have now. You mentioned the Honors College, it's obviously a great feature for the university. Do we want to be conscious about growing the Honors College? Do we want to be thinking about disproportionate growth in graduate programs if we're going to become more of a research university? So growth shouldn't be growth for its own sake. It should be growth that makes sense for the university and serving the demand of the students and the needs of the community. Exactly what that is at this point, I wouldn't speculate.
Okay. As you mentioned in your cover letter, the Great Recession took a massive hit out of college funding. What would you do or what steps would you take to make sure that that doesn't happen? Or to deal with that situation.
Yeah, well, one thing, I can't make sure that
Right,
doesn't
yeah.
happen again, and as powerful as the president is, he doesn't control the economy of the recession. But I think the recession exposed many universities to the vulnerabilities of dependence on state funding, and when those funding sources go away, the challenges that they face. And so in Florida, I appreciate that that there's been attention to not increasing tuition rates for students and try and control costs. I think we all want to keep costs down on students. At the end of the day, if the tuition is not changing and the state funding is going down, then clearly that's creating challenges for universities. So we need to work with the legislature. The presidents need to work collectively with the 12 state universities to convince the legislature and the governor that they need to make investments in higher education, and I sense that there may be an appetite for that. Probably at some point in the future there will be a rationale for increasing tuition rates. Just like cost of living goes up, tuition rates will probably need to go up at some point. But I also think we need to look at possible other sources of revenue and not just be dependent on the traditional sources of revenue. For the UNF right now has 94% of its students are in-state students, and so therefore pay in-state tuition. Many universities across the nation are diversifying their revenue portfolio and also diversifying their student body by looking to recruit more students from out of state and bringing in international students, and those students pay full pay out-of-state tuition, which is about over 3 times what the students pay in-state. And so that can be a way of enhancing the revenue for the university without asking the state residents to bear that burden of substantial increased tuition for the in-state residents. And it also has what I think is a real advantage of truly diversifying the student body. And so we want students, I think all universities want students to graduate that have a global perspective, a national perspective, and really be citizens of the world. And one could argue that you can enhance that mission by having more students on the university that come from around the nation and around the world, so that you are exposed to those different ideas and different cultures. And so there's the benefit of the revenue, but also the added benefit of just having a more diverse campus.
Cool. You also mentioned in your cover letter that most university presidents face supporting athletic programs while balancing the academic and research needs of the campus. And you were open about the fact that you have no deep insights or solutions here, but you acknowledge that the next president will have to face this challenge. So how pressing of an issue do you think is the balance between athletics and academics?
Well, I think that athletics are an important feature of almost every university in the nation. There's always controversy about what's the appropriate investment in athletics. One thing we have to understand is that athletics do cost money, that very few universities across the country actually generate positive revenue through their athletics programs. But they do bring a sense of identity to the campus. They bring a source of pride in many cases to rally around. They also are a vehicle by which the community may come on campus to participate in sporting events, and it's really important for the university to be a vibrant part of the community, and so I think that there is value there. So my comment wasn't so much, I was actually a student athlete myself as an undergraduate. I wasn't a very good one, but I was a student athlete, and I think that it provides opportunities for students, for many students that might not otherwise pursue a college education. And I think that that's when we think about the return on investment, and particularly as a state university, we want to reach out to as diverse and as broad a population as we can, and so that's one of the values of athletics as well. At the end of the day, we have to decide what we are as a university and not necessarily just looking at the dollar return investment on every individual program. And we're talking earlier today, for example, if we were just looking at it from a business perspective, we probably wouldn't have an art or music program. Those are intensive programs, a lot of one-on-one instruction, but they also enrich our community and our campus community, the performances, and I just can't imagine a real university without art and music. And similarly, it's difficult to imagine a university that doesn't have a vibrant competitive athletic program. So my comment there was that I don't have direct oversight of athletics in my current role. I know about the mechanics of how it works, and I know about NCAA compliance and all of those issues, but it hasn't been something that I have directly worked with. And so I would also need to learn more about the nature of the athletics programs here at UNF.
UNF has an independent news organization, Spinnaker, that reports the good and the bad. How important do you think this independent college news is to a healthy campus environment?
I think it's essential. I think student newspapers, we have a similar situation at the University of Nevada, Reno, an independent newspaper, the Sagebrush, and we have no input or control over their content, nor do we want to. I think that it is an opportunity for the students to have a voice and to address the issues that are important to them. I hope that the relationship will be professional and collegial, and I'm sure it would be from what I've seen with your publications thus far. But at the end of the day, it's the student newspaper, it's the student voice, and I'm a big believer in the First Amendment, and I think it would be a shame, on the other hand, to have a university that didn't have a student newspaper and that opportunities for students to address the issues that are important to them and to be a voice for the student population.
Cool.
Yeah.
Many consider UNF a hidden gem. How would you work locally to recruit students in our own community?
We've had some discussion about that, about having more visibility for the university, not just nationally, internationally, but just right in our own backyard. I think that that's a discussion that I would like to have with our internal folks and learn more about what we're doing now and what we could do to improve that. We've had some discussions earlier today about programs that are really outreach into the public schools and really begin to develop relationships with students at the middle and high school level to let them know about the programs that are available at UNF and hopefully get them thinking early on about coming here and perhaps talking to their parents and their brothers and sisters. But there's also, of course, a marketing component of this as well. What's the best use of your marketing dollars to get out into what is a very large area in the Jacksonville area? As you know, it's I guess the largest footprint of a city in the U.S. and 1 million people. So what's the best way to develop a communication plan and implement? That's not my area of expertise, and we have folks who have that expertise. But clearly, I think we need to have some greater visibility of what you described as a hidden gem right here in the community.
Okay. Last semester, there was an issue with a former KKK member on campus, and it brought up topics about white supremacy. What would be your plan if something like this happened again?
Well, we had some of these very similar issues at my university this last year. You probably know about the Charlottesville riots that occurred in August, and the student that was the face of those riots was one of our students at the University of Nevada, Reno, and it led us to a very challenging discussion that really, I would say, continues to this day on how to address those sorts of issues that can be very divisive and painful. And I think what you need to do when these sorts of things happen, and unfortunately in the world we live in, they do happen and they will happen, is immediately reaffirm who you are and what we stand for as a university, and what are our values. And remind yourself of what is important to us and that we embrace diversity and equity. And now, other issues that may arise of what to do with the student, there are challenging issues around First Amendment, so a lot of folks say kick them out of school. There are actual legal issues and First Amendment issues that make those, depending upon the circumstances, difficult situations to deal with. So you need to deal with those appropriately and effectively, but fundamentally you need to make sure that you're reaffirming who you are as a university, what you stand for, hopefully bring the campus together and think of ways to demonstrate that unity as a campus. But I will acknowledge that those are very tough issues and tough times that we're dealing with now.
Okay. And this is my last question. How would you promote diversity and inclusion?
Well, broadly speaking, among students or faculty, or would you like to drill down on that?
I guess both.
Yeah. So one of the things that we've done with faculty is we recognize that our faculty don't represent, in terms of diversity at the university where I am now, that our faculty does not mirror the diversity of the student body, and often the students don't see themselves among their faculty in the classroom. And so we have done a lot of things, and some of them may be being done here, and I really haven't had time to learn whether or not they are being done. But we have initiated programs in implicit bias to help search committees when they're out doing searches for faculty to recognize the subtle signs of bias that may cause them to choose a majority faculty member over an underrepresented faculty member for reasons they might not even recognize. We go through processes and the reviewing of faculty applicants of actually looking at the pools and looking at the gender and ethnicity of the pools. And if they're not diverse, we send them back and say, let's go back out and continue the search and actively look to diversify the pool. We also set aside positions that are specifically targeted for opportunities to diversify the faculty. And so sometimes those opportunities come along, you have a great person, but oops, the position, we don't have any position. So we try to hold some of those positions back to do that sort of thing. In terms of diversifying the students, I think one thing that can be done, I mentioned reaching out into schools. So reaching out into schools that we know have larger proportions of diverse students that may be coming from economically challenged backgrounds and may not be thinking about going to college. So go out to those schools and work with them from an early age to get them thinking about college, get them on campus, and then have programs on campus that help support those students and help them realize their potential once they're here on campus. And we've done a few of those things at my university, and I think some of those might work well here. But what I've learned is you just can't be passive about these issues. You really have to be actively engaged and truly care about diversifying your faculty and student body. And if you do that, they'll come here, they'll be successful, and that's the outcome that we're looking for.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Colin.
All right, are there any other students in the audience that would like to ask a question? All right, please come up to the microphone, introduce yourself to us.
John Alaska. My question is, as president, you get to determine, consulting with the chair of the trustees, who your vice presidents and head of athletics are. Are you more inclined to keep our current vice presidents or bring new people in?
I'm going to deflect that question, not that those aren't important decisions, but I don't know enough about them to make any decisions of whether I would make changes. But I do think that there are, any new president coming in needs to carefully evaluate the leadership team and determine if there's a time to make changes. What I can say with a high degree of certainty is that there would be a search for a provost, and the interim provost I had a very nice lunch with yesterday, and she is really really serving the university and helping to transition between the outgoing president and the incoming president. And she brought up herself that there needs to be a search for a new provost, and she may or may not be an applicant for that. That will be up to her. But there will be a search for that position, that I can say with a high degree of confidence. Yeah.
All right, you can come up to the microphone. Please introduce yourself.
Taj Johnson. Only question is,
What's the name again?
Taj Johnson.
Taj.
You talked about your different hiring practices to ensure that everyone feels equally represented here at the university based on the staff level, not on student level. Would you say that you'll choose diversity over best qualified, or best qualified over diversity, being that you want to, I would hope that you'll choose that whatever's best for the university and not based off statistics and analytics. So how would you go about that necessarily?
Well, what I think you need to do is have a process that clearly sends a message that we value diversity at the university. And the reality is that when you get down to final decisions about who you're going to hire for a particular position, say a faculty position, often you hear the phrase, all other things being equal, what would you choose? Well, all other things are never equal. And it's just a matter of weighting what factors are most important to you in hiring this person. As a president, I would not get involved in individual decisions about hiring faculty. What I would like to do is promote a culture that values diversity and promotes a system that assures that we are bringing a diverse pool of candidates, qualified candidates to campus to be considered. And in not every case is that diversity hire going to be made, and hopefully in many cases it will be. So it needs to be a process that makes sure that we are bringing forth a truly diverse and inclusive group of applicants to all of our positions, and then we decide what's the best fit for this individual department, this institution at this time. But I would not interfere in those individual decisions.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
All right, are there any, all right, please. We have one in group.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Kyle O'Donnell.
Kai?
Yes, sir. The current president has been a champion of community-based learning concepts and the effect that they have on the retention of students. It's shown that these programs, or this program, the community-based transformational learning program, increased student retention by 13% or so. Would you continue would you continue or try and expand those types of programs, especially the outreach to first-time in college students?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's one of the things that I was most impressed with when I was reading about the university and its programs. You probably know you're recognized as a Carnegie engaged university. That's quite a distinction that really bears testimony to the fact that you are focused on involvement with the community, that students are involved with programs associated with the community. I think it's great from a learning experience for the students. I also think it's a great experience for students to really learn about the value and the reward of service to the community. And it's great for the community, and it's a great way for the community to value the university when we're out there in the community and serving the community in very impactful ways. So I hadn't seen those particular statistics that you're talking about, but I did see a number, something around over 70% of UNF students are in some way participating in community activities, which is remarkable. And would like to take that solid foundation and build upon that, because I think that's a wonderful legacy and something that the university should be very proud of.
Would you go about trying to increase? Currently, the average impact last year was about $8.9 million worth of volunteer work. What are some initiatives that you try and do to increase that number or make it more effective?
Well, I'd have to understand the number better. I haven't seen that, and so I can't really comment on what I could do to change that number, other than continue to expand community engagement programs. And I think a lot of that comes from having and maintaining and having a healthy dialogue with the community and with the businesses and the stakeholders in the community and the service organizations in the community. So we wouldn't, as a university, be doing as well as you're describing if there weren't some pretty good relationships already. But this is a big, diverse, one of the advantages of having such a large metropolitan area such as Jacksonville is that there is an almost limitless number of opportunities. So it's just a matter of building upon what we have and identifying more opportunities for relationships and pursuing them. But I have to get to know the community better before I could comment specifically on what they might be. So.
And earlier you said part of the problem that a lot of universities rely on state funding. What are some of the ways that you would diversify besides raising tuition or student fees, raising funds for the college?
Well, there are different ways different types of funds that serve different purposes with the university. A lot of folks think, well, if we just went out and raised private money, then we could use that to offset any increase in tuition. And in fact, most private donations go to scholarships, which help students attend school, but they don't actually put more money in the university. Or they may build buildings or infrastructure. Again, it isn't addressing the sort of fundamental operating budget of the university. In fact, in some cases, they actually add to the operating budget. If you had a new building, you have to pay the light bill. But what I was talking about was that I think traditionally state universities have looked only at traditional tuition funds and the formula funding, whatever that is, coming from the state. Now, there are a set of metrics that the state of Florida has for determining possible extra funds that may come to the university. So we need to be mindful of that and making sure that we're performing well on those metrics and attracting those funds that the state is willing to provide. But I alluded previously to the fact that we have 94% of our students are from the state of Florida. If we were to grow our enrollment with out-of-state students and international students, which all pay full pay out-of-state tuition, again, that's about 3 times, a little more than 3 times what in-state students pay. That can generate a lot of revenue for the university that would soften or reduce the need for adding tuition dollars for in-state students. There are other possibilities. UNF right now has some presence in online educational degree programs, but there can be opportunities, again, strategically identified, where you can offer online educational opportunities for what probably in most cases would be considered non-traditional students, adults who are out working and have careers and families but want to either come back and complete their education or obtain additional professional expertise in some particular discipline. And those programs can be quite attractive and impactful for the people who take them, and they can also generate positive revenue for the university. So we can look at other ways of enhancing the revenue other than just increasing tuition for in-state residents.
Final question. As you keep mentioning the out-of-state tuition, as a resident of Florida and a beneficiary of the Florida Prepaid Tuition Trust, or Florida Prepaid, this last semester over 4 courses that I took, the fees for those 4 classes, or the fees associated with taking those 4 classes, were essentially 100% of what I paid, but they were also half of the total bill. Florida Prepaid only covers half, or the tuition for those classes. What would you do, or how would you try and lower fees for all students?
That's one that I would have to learn more about your fee structure to make an informed comment. I think I will say broadly that we care deeply about maintaining the cost of education for students and making it affordable and minimizing student debt. And we have to balance that with generating enough revenue to run the university. And so one mechanism would be, if we were to have more out-of-state students, we would generate about 3 times as much tuition dollars per student as we are with an in-state student. That could soften the need for needing to increase fees, or possibly even provide the opportunity for reducing fees. But please don't misunderstand me that I'm promising that I can reduce fees. So,
right.
Yeah.
Just to add on to that, in bringing in more out-of-state or international students, would you be offering less opportunities for in-state students?
That's the question that arises when you bring students in. So I think you have to look at your capacity as a university. So if we are, in no way would we want to bring in students from out of state that would in any way displace students so that you couldn't get the class that you need, or that there's a dormitory space that's needed for the in-state students. So that's part of the capacity analysis that we would need to do before we launched on any initiative to increase out-of-state enrollment, to make sure that in no way does that harm our in-state students.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, are there any more questions from the audience? All right, please come up and introduce yourself to us.
George Fackless.
George.
You mentioned the state metric system in the last question.
Yes.
And I believe UNF's at the bottom tier of that list. What would you do to ensure that UNF receives the funding that it deserves, and so we can gradually work our way up on that list?
Sure. That's a topic of discussion that has come up during my visit here. And I'm familiar with the metrics. I haven't actually seen the actual numbers and where we compare with other institutions. I think there's some optimism that the next round that UNF is going to come out looking much more favorably. I do understand, having been in higher administration for many years, that those metrics, as much as we like to see them move steadily forward, sometimes there are years that there are dips. It isn't just a linear progression, and so that may have just been an anomaly. I haven't seen the historical data, but I can tell you that it's a high priority for the Board of Trustees to pay very close attention to this and do our best to make sure that we are on the winning end of that system, and it would be a very high priority for me.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, please come down, introduce yourself to us.
Hi, I'm Alex. And
Hi, Alex.
I just have a question. I know that you have a very impressive resume along with all the other candidates. So what do you believe makes you stand out more than the other candidates?
Well, I think that one has to have a little bit of humility when pursuing these positions. I feel like my experience has prepared me well. I think your other candidates are very strong as well, and they will each bring a different set of credentials and attributes. And so in the end, it's about the university deciding what is the best fit for them. I will say that part of my experience that I think that does prepare me well for the presidency is, and I alluded to this in my opening remarks, is that I have had oversight of an entire university, not just all of the academic programs, but as executive vice president at the university, I'm the first among equals among vice presidents. When the president needs to be away, I serve in the role of president. I am involved with activities with donors to the university, with legislators at the state and federal level, with the equivalent of the Board of Trustees here, with the community leaders, the business leaders in the community, and I feel like I'm leaving something out. But all aspects of many roles that provosts often or just focus on the internal, it's still a big job, having oversight of the entire academic programs, but I also have information technology that reports to me. I work very closely with the Office of Research. I work very closely with student services and enrollment management. So I have really had involvement over the last 5+ years with every phase of the university, internal and external. I would have much to learn if I came here, learning about the university, learning about the culture here. You don't just come here and say, well, this worked at this university, now let's just plop it down here. No, every university has its own identity and its own needs. But I have had experience with those types of interactions in the past and have, I guess, come to feel a certain level of comfort that I feel like I can do those things, that I enjoy them, and that I've had relatively good success in doing them. But I wish you all the best in getting the best president for your university.
Yeah, and then second question, I know you said that you really want to enrich students' experience here at UNF. So how do you plan on doing that specifically?
Well, there are, again, it's not a single thing. I think there are a lot of things that are going on here that are very positive already. I think that the physical footprint of the university is still maturing as the university's building, and I've seen a plan that has, over time, that we see that as we build into the university, we have more of a sense of continuity and connectedness against various parts of the institution. I'm a big fan of a plan that we've been using at my previous institution that gives a very strong academic orientation to incoming freshmen to get them off to a very positive start so that they don't skin their knee with those first classes, and that they really arrive on campus in the university really knowledgeable about how to be a college student and how to be successful as a college student. I'm a fan of technology, of analytics, where we look at our institution and learn about our students and what signals there might be where students may be getting on a path that isn't going to lead to success, and not waiting for them to get to that point where they're already disillusioned and failing out, but get early advising to those students to get them back on the right track, to get them the help that they need so that they can continue and be successful at the university. I've heard some discussion about that there may be some value in thinking about the cultural fabric of the university. One comment that was made to me in particular was about Greek life, and that all the Greek is off campus and they have events on campus. And I need to learn more about that, but I think we want a campus that is one that makes students feel like they want to be on campus and that they're really part of the family, and this is the place where any institution can always look to improve. It's a question of identifying where's the right place to start, what's the investments we should make. And I think that you students need to be very much part of that dialogue in helping us understand what you think we need as an institution to make this be a place where you feel more socially connected and want to be as often as you can be. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, are there any more questions from students in the audience? All right. Please come up and introduce yourself.
Hello, my
Hi.
name is Theo.
Theo?
I'm the PR director with student government, so that's kind of cool. But so question for you. You mentioned earlier that you had some ideas or programs or initiatives that you've done in the past at your institution that helped improve retention rates and graduation. So I was wondering if you could just elaborate a little on that.
I can. So the program to which I'm specifically referring to is the program that is referred to at UNR as Nevada FIT, and the FIT refers to Freshman Intensive Transition. And it's my understanding actually that UNF is going to be launching a version of that for biology students. This program originated at Louisiana State, where I was previously when I was dean, and we started this program. And basically it's a program that, again, we started with biology students, where you bring in students 5 days early. If they're going to live in the dorm, they move into the dorm. And they participate in a college class that they're actually going to take in the fall. So it's not the real class, but it's the actual professor, and they're getting actual lectures, they get homework, they get exams, and they try to get 2 or 3 exams, and so it's a very compressed experience. They are organized into groups of 6, which at UNR we refer to as packs, and I need some help on what we might call them here, flocks or whatever they might be at UNF. They learn about note-taking skills, metacognition, they learn about time management, they learn about resources available to them on campus, such as math centers, tutoring centers, whatever resources that you might have available. They get to know their professor, and then they walk into class on Monday, and they now have a much better idea of what it is actually like to be in a college class. And I could elaborate on how we arrived at what type of classes, but I can tell you, just to be succinct, that we found that having students participate in the math class that they're going to take, whatever that math class might be, from remedial math all the way to Calc 3, that the students have a disproportionately large benefit, not only in the math class, but in all of their classes, and we see higher retention rates, higher GPAs, and we've been doing it long enough now at UNR that we're seeing substantially higher graduation rates. It's been long enough that we've been able to get that data point. So there seems to be a lot of enthusiasm for this idea on campus. Most every group that I've met with has asked me about it and seems to be supportive of it. And like I said, you've already are starting a version of this in biology. So this is something I think that we could potentially ramp up very quickly. And it increased, that first group of students that went through at UNR, it increased 4-year graduation rates by 25%. And that's big in our world. And it increases fall-to-fall retention rates by 6 to 7%. And again, that's big. That leads to student success, and it also leads to more revenue for the university. If those students come back and they're paying tuition and making progress, so that means you don't have to go out and recruit another bunch to replace those. So we'll keep recruiting, don't misunderstand me. But so that's the program that I was referring to, and basically what it is. And there's a lot of other, it's actually, there's a lot of details into this, and there's a lot of work that's gone into refining it over time. But fortunately, we've done most of that experiment at UNR over the last 5 to 6 years, and I feel like that we could really hit the ground running with the program here at UNF if the university is willing to embrace it. And it seems to me that there's an appetite for that if I should have the opportunity to come. And even if I don't come, you should do it. So.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, are there any more questions from the audience? All right, if there are no more questions, I will ask one question to wrap up this forum. By the way, y'all did a great job. So my question for you, assuming that you do become our next president, what is the one thing you want the University of North Florida and its graduates to be known for by the end of your tenure?
Very good question. I think the identity that we talked about previously about a university that is really engaged with the community and students who have those engagement type of experiences and service to the community, I think that's a wonderful starting point, because there aren't many institutions that have a really solid reputation along those lines. So I think that is one area that I think that we can build on and strengthen and really develop a reputation as a university that's truly engaged with the community, and that our students come out having had direct experiences, often in their careers and often in related activities that are relevant to the community, and that it enriches their experiences and distinguishes the UNF experience from perhaps another type of university experience. I hope there also is a real sense of community and identity, that you're proud of being an alumnus of UNF, that you this is, I don't know if you realize how many campuses you've been on, but this is a unique place. I have never seen a university campus that has a look or feel quite like this, and I think that it has enormous potential to have just an extraordinary physical setting that inspires a type of learning and community that most other institutions just don't have the luxury of having. So I think a real sense of belonging and unity. I hear that there's now some issues with students who come here for a couple of years and then leave for other universities, whatever those might be. We'd certainly like to see that culture change, where university students see that they have a great opportunity here at UNF and want to come here with the idea that they're going to complete their degree here at the university, understanding if they need to go somewhere else, that's certainly their prerogative. But we'd like to have that sense that when people come here, that they see their path to finishing their degree here and become alumni, and hopefully go out and cheer for the university and bring in more alumni. So it's a real sense of pride and community that I'd like to see.
All right, thank you. So with that, if there are no more questions, thank you all for coming out and getting a chance to talk to Dr. Carman. I hope you all come out to the other forums this rest of the week. We have one tomorrow at the same time, one on Thursday, and one on Friday. So again, thank you, and I give everyone a round of applause. We did a great job.
Thank you, you guys.